In this video, I'm going to be talking about breaking into advertising wisely. Now, the first thing to think about when you're dealing with an advertising program is when you should start. I always say there should be a few things set up and established before you move forward with taking on advertisers. The first thing is that you've built up a decent amount of content, and by decent amount I mean a couple months. That will really help all the stat counters you install be accurate. The next is that you have at least 2,000 to 4,000 readers per day. That can sound like a lot, but the reason I suggest waiting until you've built up this many readers is because it will allow you to charge rates for your ads that when you subtract the amount of taxes you'll have to pay, will leave you with enough money that you're paying yourself fairly for the amount of time you'll have to put into running this program. Now, if you seem like you can't build up that number, you can start earlier, but I think that this is a good base number to start with for charging rates that are fair for your time. The next thing to consider is if you have a couple hours a week left over that you can devote to dealing with advertisers. When you start taking on ads, you have to deal with clients and you'll need to answer emails from them. So make sure you have some extra time that you can use to devote to treating these people well and giving them the attention that they need. And last but not least, make sure you have your rules and limits established up front. What you will sell, what you won't sell, what sort of companies you'll work with or won't work with. Make sure you have all those sorts of guidelines set up front so that you don't get sort of pushed or swayed when you start getting into the ad program. Once you have these things set up, you're ready to dive into the details. Now, the first thing you want to do is get as many stats from your site as possible. So if you don't have these set up, you need to install Google Analytics, Quantcast, an RSS feed, some sort of social networking account, and I find it's also helpful to do reader polls. Google Analytics will give you your daily page views, it will give you your unique readers, it will tell you what sections of your site are most popular, it will also tell you where your readers are located. Quantcast takes a while and a couple months to build up and be accurate, but it gives you very valuable information about your readers' sort of their incomes, their education levels, their marital status, whether or not they have children. All those things are very helpful for placing advertisements. Your RSS feed will tell you how many readers are reading outside of your main blog. You can also place advertisements there, so make sure you know how many people are using your feed. And then a social networking account is also very important because it tells you how engaged your readers are, what they're saying, and it's sort of an interesting tool that advertisers are increasingly interested in. Reader polls aren't necessary, but I find that they can be helpful maybe once a year to sort of get some feedback on what people like about your site or what they'd like to see changed. Advertisers are often interested in this sort of data from your readers, so it can be fun to add in as well. Once you have these stats built up, the next thing to do with them is to move forward with building an ad kit. In that ad kit, you're going to want to place information about your traffic and your demographic. For traffic, you want to include your page views, and you can also include your unique daily readers. That's not required, but it's one that I think is important to include. Page views are going to be most interesting to your advertisers, so make sure that those are in there. You can find both of those in your Google Analytics dashboard. For demographic, it's important to include where your readers are, if you have some information about their marital status and whether they have children and how much money they make. That's also important to include so advertisers can get a quick snapshot of what your readers look like. The next thing to include is some basic information and details on your content. Now, it doesn't have to be a really long, drawn-out section, but maybe one paragraph about what you do and what type of things you write about. Those specific content areas will be helpful for placing advertisements. The next thing is awards or testimonials. Now, these are definitely not required or necessary to get advertisements, but they can be helpful if they apply to the sort of influence or weight that you carry in your field. If you don't have any yet, not a big deal. No one is going to worry about that, but they can be helpful. And last but not least are prices. There aren't really any sort of hard and fast rules about prices that you can charge or some sort of chart that you can start out with, but the reason I suggest starting with 2,000 to 4,000 readers means you can start charging over or at least around $100 for, let's say, a monthly ad. Now, the reason I say starting with that price is because you're going to have to cut out a decent chunk of that money and pay it for self-employment taxes. So let's say you make $100 a month on one ad. Let's say you keep maybe 55 or 60 of that for your actual profit. Think about how many hours are going into dealing with that ad and make sure you are paying yourself a fair hourly rate for that ad management. So once you have your prices established, make sure that you consider how you're charging. Maybe larger ads cost more, smaller ads cost less. Ads that run closer to the top of the site will cost more than ads that run way down at the bottom. Figure out a schedule that works for you and a payment scale, and then put that in a chart, and you're going to put that in your ad kit as well. And don't be afraid to change rates slowly over time. You just don't want to change them more than once a year, or your advertisers will get a little bit frustrated. The next thing is, how do you find advertisers? The easiest way to find advertisers is to look around your niche and see who's advertising. Just make sure that when you find somebody, you're not trying to poach or lure them away from another site with a lower rate. People find out about that and tend to get pretty ticked off. So the first thing you want to do is craft a very short but friendly email to these advertisers and just say, hey, I saw you were advertising on several blogs in my niche. I just wanted to send you my ad kit. If you're interested in advertising on another, design blog, I'm available and we'll be happy to chat. That's all you say, and normally people are happy to write you back and sort of get some more information. You can also look in the back of magazines. I think magazines like Ready Made or e-magazines are a great place to look and see who else is participating within your field. Once you've got those built up, you can consider whether or not you want to move forward with doing your own ad program or whether or not you want to work with an advertising network. If you do decide to sign with an advertising network, there are a bunch to choose from. Some of the main ones within the design industry are Federated, there's the Martha Stewart Circle, there's Glam, there's BlogHer. What you want to keep in mind is that these networks will take a cut of your profits because they're managing your ad program, and they will also have a contract for you to sign. Make sure that if you hire a contract lawyer to look over these, it is well worth the money that it costs to make sure that you understand what sort of exclusivity or out clauses are or are not required with that contract. Just make sure you know what you're signing into. If you're not comfortable with a larger network, you can look into Google AdSense. These are easy to place ads that you can stick in a right column or a left column on your site. You can also insert them in your RSS feed. They may not be quite as pretty as the ads that you'll get from a larger network or ads you'll sell yourself, but they are very simple to deal with. You can also consider running your own program. If you do, you're going to need a little bit of HTML knowledge because you need to be able to drop code in and out of your site when you place an ad. You're also going to need to know about creating ads. If you don't know how to make them yourself or you have someone who needs some help, one thing that you can do is set up sort of a barter situation with a graphic designer. We did this for a while on Design Sponge. We would send them any inquiries that came from our advertisers who needed help building ads. In exchange, they would place ads in the code form on our site for us. It's a great way to start out if you need help with placing ads and also need to find a way to help people get their ads created. Also, you're going to need a way to process payments. We use PayPal and love it. There are some pretty high fees, but it's incredibly easy to use, and it lets your advertisers pay via e-check, via a PayPal account from their business, or via a credit card. Also, be sure to set up little phone alerts or some sort of alert around the office that will remind you to take ads down or to put ads up. You can often let people have way too much time if you forget to take them down, or you might forget to put someone's ad up. So just make sure you have some sort of alert system set up to keep you on schedule. The next thing to think about is if you do have an ad system set up and it's going for a while, you can often kick things up to the next level by offering geo-targeting, which lets people target just to readers in a specific area. You can offer some sort of contests that are sponsored by an advertiser. You can also offer some sponsored content or themed content that they're involved in. Now, these are sort of next level ideas, but they're good things to think about if you're looking to expand your program after a while. Now, here's some tips to avoid when you're starting your ad program. Never let an advertiser buy a post from you, meaning that you write about them in exchange for money. It really damages the trust you'll have with your readers. Second, don't sell ads years and years in advance, or maybe even a full year in advance sometimes, because you want to make sure that you allowed for growths in traffic, which will then translate into growths in the cost of your advertising. You don't want to increase your cost more than once a year, but if you sell 2 years of advertising in advance, it doesn't really allow you to raise the rates and have them pay what would be a fair rate for your areas of advertisement. Now, you also want to avoid doing too many giveaways. Advertisers will try to use those as advertising when they instead should be paying for ads. Just make sure that what you're giving away would be equal to the cost of an ad, because you don't want to give away precious editorial space for, let's say, the cost of a $25 necklace. It just doesn't break out into a fair ad trade. Last but not least, make sure that you know how to pay your taxes. It's always very important to know the self-employment rules in your area. So best of luck with everything, and stay tuned to the Design Sponge Biz Ladies categories for more free advice about advertising and running your own business online.